Hey, friends. Next on the Lucy Smiles Living Room podcast, I am on location for the first time. Here in Mazatlan, Mexico, I decided to take a drive down to Centro, which is our historical area in Mazatlan, and the Way of the Heart's Energy Center. In this beautiful healing space run by Sheri McCraw, a fellow Canadian living in Mazatlan, we sit down and Sheri not only talks about the power of her voice, she actually shares her health journey, losing her voice through a medical challenge. She also talks about her journey of going from corporate to entrepreneurship and following her intuition all along the way. This is such an inspiring conversation. Some tears were shed. And I really believe that this conversation is going to be a catalyst for those of you who may be wondering what is your next step in life. Sometimes there is a huge power of simply surrendering and seeing what unfolds through the surrendering. Sheri is such a dear friend and such a wise woman who shares her story with such vulnerability and grace. And I'm really excited to share this conversation with you. And I hope that this sparks something inside of you to take a look at maybe something in your own life where you need a little bit of a spark of inspiration to help you to continue on your path. So I hope you enjoy. And here is Sheri in my conversation live in Mazatlan, Mexico. Hey, friends, and welcome to Lucy Smiles Living Room podcast. I am your host, Diane Lozo, also known as Lucy Smiles. And I was going to say in the living room today, but we're actually in somebody else's living room. We are in Sheri McCraw's living room, living space here in Centro Historica of Mazatlan, Mexico, in the Way of the Heart's Healing Center. And I'm just so excited to be having a beautiful, authentic conversation with Sheri. Welcome to your living space.
Thank you, Diane.
I'm so excited.
I'm glad you're here.
I'm so excited to be here. So this is our first on location interview conversation. And before we get started with chatting with Sheri, a little bit about Sheri is Sheri actually didn't start out as an entrepreneur in healing in the spiritual space. She actually, I would say a little over 10 years ago, was actually in the corporate setting in Canada, in Toronto, Canada. And through working through events and running and managing events at large scale, she then started to trickle in, and we'll get more into the details, trickled into mindfulness, trickled into yoga. And one of the things that I want to chat with you around your then journey through this entrepreneurial space is one of the things that I have noticed in my own journey as a female entrepreneur is I didn't start off as an entrepreneur. And one of the things that I noticed in my journey was that I am multi-passionate. So I want to maybe dive in just to get started before we start with this beautiful center that I could feel the energy. And I know there's something going on in the other room over there that we'll get involved in is when I think about you went through mindfulness meditation through, was it the U of T?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you did 200 hours of yoga during, 2020. But starting off in more of a corporate setting, did you feel something inside of you that started you to look at things differently and maybe look towards and move towards things? Or where did that start for you?
Well, it really first started when I began to take a bit of an interest in Buddhism.
Oh, wow.
So I did the thing that a lot of people do is pick up Buddhism for Dummies.
Oh my God.
Remember those yellow
I think
and black
literally,
books?
yes.
Yeah. So I picked up one of those books, and as I read it, it was more a remembering. I was like, I remember this. It wasn't like I was learning it. It was a remembering. And so it immediately drew me in. One of the real main principles of the philosophy of Buddhism is that don't just listen to what I'm telling you and believe it. Try it for yourself. And if it works for you, then incorporated into your life. And that has always been something that I've really believed in throughout my whole life. But as I read the book of learning about Buddhism, there was this part about meditation.
Right.
And I was like, oh, no, never. I am not a meditator. I will never be a meditator. I think I'll skip the meditation part and I'll just learn about Buddhism.
Because that would work.
Yeah, right. It's like saying I'm gonna be a hockey player, but I'm not going to learn how to skate. Like, I'll just skip that part.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah. And, but you hear about how good meditation is for you and you think, oh, I need to try to do it. And you think it looks like sitting cross-legged with a straight back and doing it for like an hour and clearing your mind. And there's all these misconceptions around meditation. And of course, as you let go of those ideas,
right,
and start to really embrace meditation, you realize that that's not at all what it's really about.
Right. So when you started off with this, tapping into Buddhism, do you find that, because I speak for myself, is that I find that it's not that I went on this journey for all of the things. It's one thing started then you start to meet someone, serendipity happens. So was it something where it was like that one spark led to another spark? Because if I think about what I know of you and say even your journey, is that starting maybe say 10 years ago, say 2016, where you were in events and you're running events like large corporate, very linear, very left brain, methodical, analytical, stressful kind of left brain. And now where we're sitting, I've got chills because I've experienced being here many times before, is it's almost like the two extremes. So how did that journey keep on leading you? And did you lead yourself, or, because there's an interesting dynamic there where we lead ourselves versus being led. So can you touch on that?
I would definitely say it was a process of being led, for sure. As you begin to explore things, you are introduced to more things. You're introduced to different people with different points of view. So as that interest in Buddhism and reading the book led me more into an interest in mindfulness. Mm-hmm. And then that led me to think, well, I like to explore what's out there. So University of Toronto has an amazing program in applied mindfulness and meditation that brought in neuroscience. So they had professors who taught courses in neuroscience and others who taught courses in meditation, and it all brought it together so beautifully. And then when you're in that environment, you meet other people who say, well, maybe you might like this or try that. And I was also reading a book at the time. It was by a woman who used to, I think, produce Oprah's shows. And I think it was called The Year of Yes or something.
Oh, I remember that book.
Yeah. And I thought, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And so I started to surrender a little bit more and say yes to a lot more things, which led to me going into yoga therapy training.
Wow.
Not to be a yoga teacher. It was my own personal development. And then as I came out of that, people saying, I would like you to teach me yoga. I'd like you to teach yoga. And I thought, okay, well, people are asking. So I moved in. Yeah, but it's always been like a letting go, because for sure I was the type A person.
Wow.
Wake up in the morning and I would literally run through every step of what I was going to do that day. As soon as I get up, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this. And when you do that, it creates a sense of anxiety.
Right.
Because we're looking into the future, living our day in our head and bringing up a sense of anxiety.
Yeah.
So was quite because people might think, oh, well, she's always been calm. Well, yes, I've always been a fairly calm person, but I definitely was that type A of perfectionism and like a list of what needed to be accomplished that
Mhm.
day, which always led to a feeling of anxiety.
It's interesting that you just shared something. So I spoke with a friend of mine yesterday who did yoga teacher training.
Oh yeah.
Just last year. There's two things I want to bring up that you brought up. She had mentioned, she said, Diane, I am not the same person. And that is what I'm hearing what you say. And so in saying that, I have a question for you, because a lot of times, or many times, and I won't generalize, when we are evolving and we are starting to lose the old self and we're finding this new sense of self that's always there, we're remembering.
Right.
It's not always easy because we still have the same environment that we are in. And so can you share your journey around, I find there's a bravery to be had there where you're allowing yourself to say no to the old self and to shed that. Many times we can get stuck in, well, this is how I've always done it, so maybe I should continue to do it that way. And then the ego. So did you have a time where maybe there were some ego chats saying, don't change,
Sure.
Sheri, or people are going to be disappointed. What are people going to think? Did you ever have that dynamic through this evolution? Because of where we are now is quite different from, say, I would say the Sheri that was running those.
Oh yeah, for sure. It is, we do, even though we think we're sometimes not, we do live up to other people's expectations of who we are.
Mhm.
And it's hard to you're almost like breaking their hearts, because you're like, well, I'm not who you think you need me to be.
Mhm.
And so you end up, I think, spending a lot of alone time.
Yeah.
Because you're not quite in the old world and you're not quite in the new world. You're kind of in this in between. And I really think that it is a really good time to spend a lot of time on your own,
Mhm.
allowing that process. I let go of a lot of things all at once, and a 30-year marriage that was a beautiful relationship. It had nothing to do with that our marriage wasn't good. It had to do with me. I had never experienced me on my own.
Right.
I had been with him since a very young age and loved it. No regrets ever for a second.
Yeah.
But one day I was like, well, who am I?
Right.
Who am I, like, alone? I know who I am as part of a couple, and we're always different. But I felt like there was like this cork. And I was like, I can't quite push this. Like, what is it? And that actually spurred me to take my mindfulness courses at U of T.
Wow.
Because I was searching for something. I knew there was something that my soul needed, but I couldn't figure it out. So I started exploring. And honestly, when I realized that I needed to maybe move on from my marriage, I literally felt sick. I couldn't even think of it. I couldn't, I couldn't. Like, I thought to the day we die,
Yeah. That's why that's what we're taught, right?
That's what we're taught.
Right.
And that quirk was there. What is it? And I kept doing these things and nothing was working. And then it became the realization of that. So that was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, and it led to a lot of loneliness. But it's in that time where you can go into, like, what they call the dark night of the soul.
Right.
And you go into it, and when you can really experience it and be in it, you come out the other side and it's beautiful.
Right.
And you've evolved a little bit.
Yeah.
And then when you begin to do that enough times, then you don't fear it so much anymore. Okay, this is going to be dark and this is going to be hard, but I can go through it and come out the other side. And it's always beautiful.
Interesting.
Always.
Now, how did you allow yourself to, because there's times I'm sure where you're like, just get me the F out of this.
Yeah, of course.
So how did you handle those moments? Or was there a guidance, something that you were grounded in, person? Because that's really big.
Yeah, I think it was just a deep knowing, just a deep trust in knowing that, like, really looking inside yourself and just knowing that it was the right thing to do.
Right.
I mean, it would have been very easy when I was going home from work at night just to keep going on that streetcar and go back to my old life.
Wow.
That was so beautiful. And people said, oh, well, it must have been easier leaving because you knew you could go back. And I said, actually, knowing I could go back made it harder to not.
Wow.
You know, that was the harder choice.
Right.
Is to follow my heart, knowing that if I went back, I was just kind of deceiving myself.
Yeah.
And just going back and knowing that that cork was still going to be there, and knowing that, okay, if I do that, I'm either going to live inauthentically for the rest of my life.
Oh my goodness.
Comfortable, happy enough, but not to my soul's purpose.
Right.
Or I could continue on this difficult but so fulfilling journey.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, did that in those moments, what then led you to, well, we're sitting in Mexico, beautiful Mexico.
Right.
So was that another catalyst? I say catalyst and I see a beautiful cat.
And
then enter cat. Enter catalyst. I love this. I wish we had more cameras on our side. So was that then something that allowed you to have this opening? So Mexico, you'd never been to Mexico. So how did that come up? Where did that come from for you?
Oh yeah, that is such an interesting thing. So during the pandemic, I guess we were all spending even more time alone. So it led to more time alone, more time to begin investigating things like metaphysics. Right. Listening to Abraham Hicks, listening to a lot of, that was my gateway drug, I always call it. And really like every day listening to it, and every day. And at first you're like, you're struggling a little bit. Do I totally understand this? Yeah. And of course you just keep going. And then when you were talking about ego later. Yeah. So that ego that says, oh, you better stop, or you're not good enough, or you're not this, you're not that. So I began to identify that voice. And actually I had a name for it. I called him, the backstabbing little gnome.
That's what I love it. Why not make it strong?
And so every time one of those thoughts would come in, I'd be like, that's the backstabbing little gnome, and he needs to get out of here. Yeah. And at first you're constantly recognizing him, and you're constantly telling him to go away. Yeah. But over time, and it took maybe a year of constantly recognizing that voice, it's not me. It's something other than me, because the true me does not feel that way at all. Wow. It's that little thing there. And eventually you knock it away so many times that it doesn't come back. Hardly ever. Yeah. And then it becomes a daily, you don't need to look at it, but as long as you look at it and recognize it, and
I think that's beautiful.
Yeah. And then you don't need to recognize it very often anymore.
It sounds like too, because sometimes the illusion of something is so big, but once you name it, you're like, you're not that big.
Yeah. And have a sense of humor about it.
Totally.
Like that's why I gave him that silly name.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would just like talk to him. I'd say, get out of here. That's not me. Like, don't you say those things to me, and having a sense of humor about all of this is super important.
Yeah. I think that's true too for myself, when things can get a little bit serious, or, fear can have a bit of a part of the show. Right. Sometimes I just have to say, this is all a game, and I get to be the owner of the game.
That's right.
Rather than allowing all these other, people or circumstances to take over the game board. Is to be able to say, hey, you know what? Life is meant to be fun. I woke up this morning. The joy that we have and gratitude plays a huge role, as I know with yourself as well too. And just knowing that things change.
Yes.
Right.
Oh my gosh. Knowing that things always change. Yeah. Nothing remains the same. Yeah. Change is the only thing that never changes. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. Never heard it that way. That's pretty cool. It's so interesting.
And that really struck me. And I've always enjoyed change. Yeah. So I feel like it wasn't such a stretch for me.
Right.
But and then so you're asking about Mexico,
which is a huge change.
That was a huge change.
Yeah.
And that simply came from this knowing again, like Mexico is calling me, and I'm thinking, but I don't really want to go to Mexico. I've heard so many bad things, and it's dangerous, and I don't know anybody there. Like, where would I go, and where would I live? And but I knew it was coming. Like, it was so overwhelming, that sense of, I'm going there. Everything I picked up, books, dishes, Mexico. I'm really? Like, I guess I'm going to Mexico. I sort of approach it with a sense of humor. Like, I don't know what's going on, but I guess I'm going.
Wow.
And then suddenly, a friend, her niece was moving to Guadalajara.
Okay.
And as soon as I heard that, it was like lightning bolt. And I'm like, that's who I'm going with.
Really? Yeah.
And
so it was a feeling for you.
Oh my gosh. It was like an electric shock through my body when I heard it.
Yeah.
And it was like, that's who I'm going with. And it was literally barely a month before I packed up everything and got on a plane, thinking for 4 months.
Wow.
That I was coming to Mexico.
And how long ago was this? 3 years ago?
That was in 2020.
Oh, so
almost exactly 4 years ago.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
4 years ago next week.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah, it was November 1st. Yeah,
so
2020.
Cool.
Yeah. And again, it was just saying yes. It was like, when I look back on it now, I think, holy, how did I even do that?
Yeah.
Like, I must have been in a slightly different state, because I literally packed up my life and said goodbye to everyone.
Yeah.
And flew to Mexico, to Guadalajara of all places. It wasn't
cool
like
place.
I was, I love that city.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like I was going to a resort place with lots of, I was going to Mexico.
They're literal. It's interesting you just said, I must have been in a different state. That I think is true, because when I look back on myself, and I want to also touch on the different components of how you went from, now you're like flying to Guadalajara, is that I think when we are, and again, whatever your belief system is, philosophy, religion, source, whatever that looks like for people, is when I look back on my own like gypsy self,
right?
And I look back, I'm like, I can't recall what that state was, because it was a different state. Because I think if I was in my logical state of, I need to like stay in this little box, that little me in the box doesn't make decisions like the decisions that I've made that were clearly outside of the box.
Definitely.
And I believe that when we can look at that and allow us to surrender to a different state, then our state of being can be playing the role on that board game, right?
Absolutely.
And I think it's really beautiful that you were able to, I just got chills, because I think the decision that you made to go to Mexico, the decisions that you had made incrementally before that, were making that decision for you. So everything is on purpose.
Yeah.
Right.
It felt more like following a path.
Right.
I felt like I never decided anything on this whole journey.
Yeah.
I just surrendered to it and kind of like, okay, well, we'll see where this leads. And that book again about saying yes to everything. Yeah. And it led to, some really crazy experiences in Mexico, and then led ultimately here into what I'm doing now.
So when you went to Guadalajara, and then I know you were in Mazatlan, you started off in a business here, not this. So how did that look, and what brought you to be open to being now, because even like running a business here beforehand, you were doing a B&B. Share a little bit about that.
Right. So that first year I moved around Mexico quite a bit.
Oh, right.
And a friend who I met during my time invited me to come on a tour to Mazatlan, which I'd never heard of before.
Wow.
And I almost didn't go because I had just gotten back from Oaxaca City the night before. But then I said, no, I'm saying yes to things. So I don't care. I'm tired. I can sleep on the bus.
Yeah.
So I get in at night, repack my stuff, and get on the bus, tour bus in the morning, come here to Mazatlan. And it was in May of 2020. 2020, that first year.
Oh, wow.
And I actually didn't like the city that much because it was mostly in a different area than I'm in now.
Okay.
And I thought, okay, it's, it's fine. It's whatever. And then the person that I came with, he was saying, oh, I'd like to open a bed and breakfast. And, And I thought to myself, that's something that I've always wanted to do.
Wow.
So I ended up, we found the place in August. I moved here in September, and I woke up one morning and I was like, okay, I don't speak Spanish. I don't know anybody in this city.
Mhm.
I was alone because my business partner went back to Ajijic.
Wow.
How am I going to hire staff?
Oh my gosh.
And how am I going to open a bed and breakfast? I have 28 days. And I, again, just went, okay. And just to the universe, I'm like, send me my helpers. Who's going to help me do this? And I've always also felt that support of, I always envision myself like linking arms with the angels.
Yeah, they're there.
They're guardians.
Yeah.
And like, okay, guys, how are we going to handle this? How are we going to do this?
Yeah.
And literally surrendering to that and asking, always ask.
I was going to say that when you said that, I think it's so important when we could say like, how I'm curious how this is going to unfold. And then it just shows up.
Yes.
Right?
And ask for help.
Yeah.
I honestly, it's always worked for me. There's never been a situation where I haven't said, please help me with this. It's over to you guys. Look after it, would you?
Right.
And they do.
Yeah. It's amazing.
And that day, that's what happened. Is
Really?
all these people started showing up in my life.
Yeah.
That were going to help me open this business.
Mm-hmm.
And it opened in 28 days, nearly killed me. But but again, it was my journey of needing to control and needing to be perfect and needing to be the one who did all the work all the time.
Right.
In my own head.
Yeah.
It wasn't other people's expectations. Right. It was my own.
Yep.
And I thought through that journey through that business that maybe I could let go of some of that, the needing, like I'm always, I need to do this. Mm-hmm. So that business really taught me a lot about, it gave me the courage to open another business.
There you go. Wow.
It gave me the connections of knowing people. It made me fall in love with the city.
Right.
And so when the business ended about 18 months later, I looked back on it and thought, wow, look at everything I learned.
Yeah.
Although at that point when it ended, I was still like, oh my God, like, oh, this wasn't supposed to happen. And but again, I surrendered to the path that was shown to me. Instead of going, oh, my business, I created all this. I need to hang on to it. I don't want to let it go. Like, instead I went, okay, I have a new path to follow.
And I think there's something really, really important what you just said, where you allowed yourself to be in the humanness. Because I believe that we are like, I feel that people think that we always just have this way of like, it's always all going to work out, which you did say. And there are going to be times, even moving forward, where we're going to question and we are going to sit in sometimes in anger, sometimes in disbelief, sometimes even in victim.
Sure.
We are human. That's why I could feel the meat suit. We're here in this human experience and allowing ourselves again to feel those things. It's just don't sit in it for so long.
Right.
So I love that you said that, where you said, I sat back and I thought, you sat in the realness of, why did this end after 18 months? But then you just clearly shared how you reframed it. And I love that. Like that really is important for people to hear.
I honestly, of maybe anything I've said, I think that's the most important thing, because we all do it. Like we hold on to what we thought life was supposed to be.
Exactly.
And how, we feel maybe we were wronged, or we feel we were, like that. I did that. I created that.
Yeah.
And the only thing that hurts is us.
Yeah.
When we hold on to it and we fight, like people say, well, didn't you have a contract? And I was like, thank God I didn't have a contract, because I didn't want to hold on and struggle with that.
It's amazing.
I wanted to take that path that And there was funny things that led up to me totally being able to walk away with no ties to it.
Wow. Yeah.
And that came from not struggling in the past of something that had occurred that I didn't grab it on and like, this should be this way. And I deserve this. I didn't do that then. So that when this happened, I was able to just walk away so easily.
Wow.
But then there was that you go through the, oh my gosh, like I had thought I would create a healing center there and I would have the energy system there. And that is where I had envisioned it being. So that when it crumbled again, I was like, whoa, you know, and you have some people a few days, I had a few days, some people a few weeks, a few months.
Sure.
Where I felt like, oh my God, like life is not what I thought. Like, and I knew my purpose was not running a bed and breakfast in Mexico.
Right.
I always knew that's not why I was here.
Yeah.
Because it didn't feel, I loved it. I loved my guests.
Yes.
But it felt like, no, this isn't flowing like it should.
So question for you, because you just said you love your guests. Now, isn't that because, so we're going to talk about the E system.
Right.
Now is Dr. Sandra Rose Michael.
Yes.
So she's the founder and we'll get into that. So was it one of your clients at the B&B that shared this system with you, or how did that?
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking, so how did that work?
So what had started to happen was that my guests would come and they would say to me, I just feel so relaxed here. I feel so at home. And so I don't feel like I don't want to leave. Like some people I would have in my kitchen crying when I was making breakfast on their last day. They're like, I don't want to go. And they started saying to me, you know, have you ever thought about creating a retreat center or, you know, more of a holistic thing? And I began to think, I do think that. So it was one of those people who actually sent me the very first interview of Dr. Sandra with Jason Shurka.
Wow.
And it was a 2-hour interview. And in that interview, it was like, yeah, that's it.
So
that's
that
why
same
I'm here.
Feeling of,
like that whole feeling of this is what I want to do.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, like so clear. Like people will say to me, oh, you must have gone and tried it a whole bunch of times before you did. I was like,
just like I tried on Mexico. Oh, no, I didn't.
I didn't. No, I didn't.
4 years later, still here.
Yeah, but I kind of said,
Sure.
And then I let that go. I just said, no, I didn't try it. But I knew it was the right thing.
It's amazing. You knew. And that's the second time you said that. It's a knowing.
You know,
right?
Like I call it a knowing, and it doesn't come from your brain.
No.
Never.
Yeah.
And it doesn't come from the mind. It comes from the body.
Yeah.
The body knows.
Yeah.
You know, we have all these cells within our stomach and our heart that are the same cells that are up here.
Yeah.
So our brains, you know, our brain cells are in our heart, our brain cells are in our stomach.
Yeah.
And so when we feel if I've ever made a decision for my head, it's 50-50 whether it was a good decision or not.
Yeah.
But when you make it always from the heart, it is always a good decision.
Yeah. I think that's amazing too, because I want to go back to authenticity. You know, I feel like I'm slow on the bus here, but I went to this event in Vancouver a few weeks ago and they were talking about the highest frequency is authenticity. And I actually didn't know that after like 2 decades of doing, I'm always still so new to the class. But they were saying that your frequency raises, and I'm paraphrasing this, so please don't go on, wherever you go to find out this facts. Don't fact check me, please.
Right.
Please don't. You can if you want, but don't call me. But they say like 40% increase, or like your frequency raises by 40 times when you're authentic. So can you imagine if we just were authentic? And I want to go back to what you said. A lot of times we can get a lot of anxiety. Number one, if we feel like we compare ourselves to other people.
Right.
Or, did we show up good enough for someone? But if we show up ourselves, imagine how easy it is if someone doesn't resonate with us. I don't even want to say they don't like us.
Yeah.
They just don't resonate. Then at least we never have to go back and question ourselves, because we're like, that was me showing up.
Oh yeah.
That's not for them. It's the same thing. I want people to show up to me however they are. whether they resonate with me or not,
Right.
because I would rather honor someone's authenticity than honor how they showed up for me.
Yeah.
So does that make sense? It's just kind of like, imagine how
Total
chill
sense.
our world would be
Oh my
outside.
gosh.
And if they went to the EE system and had the Torah, like,
Yeah.
so I just wanted to share that because I think authenticity is just underrated.
Oh,
Right.
100%.
Right.
I mean, authenticity gives you 100% freedom
Oh,
because you no longer, it's not that you don't care, but when people don't resonate with you and they go out of your life, you're totally fine with it.
Yeah.
Because you're like, I didn't have to change anything about me.
yeah.
And when they do resonate with you,
Yeah.
it's the best feeling in the world.
Yeah.
Because you haven't had to change anything about you.
Right.
You've just been able to be your authentic
And you're not
self.
expecting them to change to suit you.
Right.
Which
and
we've done that before.
That
Guilty.
is a big thing.
Yeah. It's huge.
That need to change others
Yeah.
to make them suit our feelings about
yeah, so that we could be happy. Like,
Right.
make me happy, right?
Right.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
Exactly. And so, like with the energy system,
Right.
I never say to people, oh, you need to come or you should come. I just begin talking about my own authentic experience with it.
Yeah.
And people either resonate or they don't.
Mhm.
And then if they do, then we talk more. And if they don't, then we don't. We talk about other things.
Yeah.
And at one time in my life, that kind of thing would have bothered me. Like I would have taken personally, oh, they don't resonate with what I'm doing. Like,
Right.
And feel bad. But now, no, there's
Mhm.
no trace of that. It's
Yeah.
just, it's you either do or you don't. And then,
Yeah. And when you're in the business or like in the energy of wanting to truly help support people and help
Right.
them, then you're happy to help them.
Yes.
And you're happy if they don't need your help.
Yes.
Imagine that.
Absolutely.
Right. And I know I feel that way where it's very calming, and say my own passion for the work that I've done and what I've grown to do with this, just wanting to help people see the world in the way that I can share that, whether it's with wellness or whatever that looks like for me.
Right.
Then it's a pleasure to be able to support people with like, hey, I'm going to share something with you.
Yes.
And if it resonates with them, it's because it resonates. And if it doesn't, it's
Right.
because it doesn't.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to have that feeling of,
Yeah.
they don't want to work with me, or it's like, no, they just are not meant to.
Right. Right.
Imagine.
And when you incorporate that into everything in your life, it is so freeing to always say that, you're hoping that something's going to happen.
Mhm.
Like, and we all do. I mean, we all hope that, this or that,
Mhm.
but to always be able to say, it will happen if it's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And yes, I do hope that happens, but I'm not attached to that outcome.
Yeah.
So I put it out there. This is what I would like, but I'm not attached to it.
Yeah. And I think it goes all the way back to the Buddhism for Dummies.
Oh, yes.
Because again, I've
yes.
done a lot of like learning about Buddhism over the last while as well too. And one of the things they talk about is, number one, eradicating the miseries of like attachment, because attachment and expectation, it leads to disappointment. So when you can walk around not attaching or being expecting, and again, we're human, so we're not perfect. I'm not saying we're not floating, believe me. But to be able to reframe back and say, okay, wait a second, why am I feeling unsettled?
Yeah. Yeah.
How am I showing up for my expectations?
That's right.
It's
and
wonderful.
it always is our own expectations. It's never somebody else's, what they've done to you or what they say to you.
Yeah.
It's always our own interpretation of what is going on.
Yeah. I wanted, before we talk on the system and exactly how it works and why we're here, and it's such a beautiful thing, is I would love to, because I know you do have a health journey story. We don't have to go super deep into it, but I feel like, as I'm hearing your beautiful voice and as I'm also hearing your journey I feel like everything is emotional.
Right.
And so your voice in this world has become louder energetically. And I know that there's a story around, so do you mind maybe just, I feel like it's really important. I would love for my community to learn more about that, because you shared it with me when we sat for the first time together.
So I guess it started in my late 30s. I began to have issues with being able to breathe deeply. And it was a 10-year journey of seeing many specialists, and everyone always saying, your tests are normal, your tests are normal. And I'm like, but I was having more and more problems breathing. And I was always out of breath. I couldn't walk and carry on a conversation.
Yeah.
And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse until finally one of my doctors said, look, just go to the hospital, get a CAT scan. And when I went in, she phoned me the next day and said, do you want to come into my office and talk, or do you want to know on the phone? And I said, well, I already know something's up, so you might as well, we'll just do it on the phone. Yeah. And she said, well, they've discovered a mass in your throat. And it's funny, I didn't panic. I didn't think, like, normally I think you think, oh, it's cancer or something like that. Yeah. But I didn't go down that route. I don't usually go down the route of fear. I try to just, like, until I know what it is, there's no point in getting worried about it. So I went back in the very next week. The surgeon is there and he says, well, I think I know what it is, but I need more doctors to come and consult on it. And this is at the university hospitals in Toronto. So we're talking about the best hospitals in Canada. Yeah. And so then the following week I go back again, and they're, the typical men, they've got this like TV screen, and then there's a camera up my nose and down my throat, and they're all like trying to get the camera to work, and I'm just like, oh my goodness.
Not the same as the tech guy trying to get the microphone. Yeah, right. That was a little bit easier for us too.
Guys, like, it's like in
oh my gosh,
in a lot of pain with this camera up and down. Yeah. So anyways, they tell me that I have an extremely rare condition. It was some now I'm going to forget it because I'm trying to remember. Anterior subglottic stenosis. Okay. So what it was a narrowing of my trachea. So scar tissue was growing in the trachea, and I had a tiny airway to breathe with. It's kind of amazing that my body didn't go into a heart attack or that type of thing, because the breathing was so restricted. So the first thing that they do is they schedule you for a surgery to kind of try to push that scar tissue open through your trachea. And I ended up going in before the surgery because I basically got pneumonia, and that just, my breathing was like,
oh my goodness. Like, it was like the worst thing to happen during that time then.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like it was almost a death sentence. Yeah. So rushed me to the hospital. Luckily my surgeon was working that day, and he was able to push the scar tissue away. So, because I had pneumonia, I spent some time in intensive care. Get home, and he says, you're going to have that procedure again in a couple months. So I go in and have it again.
What time of what year was this?
So this was in the end of 2012 and beginning of 2013.
Interesting.
So the first two surgeries were in 2013. Yeah. So then after the second surgery, he said, we are going to have to do a procedure that removes actually part of your trachea. So it's called a tracheal resection. Mm-hmm. And again, it's not something that very many doctors have ever performed or even know that can be done.
Right. So, let alone like the post-surgery, like expectations, really.
Yeah. So the actual surgery itself, and then so he had said to me, there's a 70% chance that you're going to have a trach. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, there's a 30% chance I won't. Mm-hmm. But the 70% went out that time. So I woke up with my chin sewn to my chest and this trach and staples from side to side. And of course, not being able to speak a word. Mm-hmm. So that was really traumatic. That was, you spend a couple days in the hospital, and then they send you home with a machine that you need to suction your tubes so that you can breathe, because they clog up constantly because they run down into your lungs and up the throat as well. Yeah. So you're ripping it open, putting saline solution in goes the suction machine. Well, of course, they trained my husband and they trained me. I got home that first day. Machines are all there. My husband knows how to do it. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden it blocked.
Oh my gosh.
Like absolutely no air. And I was so weak from the surgery still. Like I was just barely able to stand.
Yeah.
So I was like, thinking for those seconds, like I can't get to my machine.
Mm-hmm.
My husband happened to notice the lack of sound. He came running in, just kind of rips it open, shoves the thing down, and I start to breathe. Well, that then sets you up for every day you think to yourself, am I going to die today?
Yeah.
Because no ambulance could have ever got there in time. No one could have got there, like unless they were right there with me.
Yeah.
And so each day you're kind of facing your death and you can't speak.
Yeah. Oh.
And
Oh my gosh.
you also realize that every single emotion that you have, whether it's an emotion of recognition, emotion of anything, it is here. And the agony, because this has all been cut open and removed, and vocal cords are damaged and cartilage is gone, you need to not have any emotions then.
Because I was going to ask you too, as you're sharing the beginning part of you coming home with the machine, all I was thinking as I'm hearing you say that is, and we don't have, so they set you up physically.
Yeah.
Where's the mental wellness therapist for something so traumatic? And and all I'm thinking,
oh yeah,
you don't even, what about your mental well-being, let alone like, you want to breathe and live.
Right.
Number one.
Yeah.
But what about like your mindset and your like the trauma?
They don't address that
so
at all.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but I wanted to just honor that. And now you're talking about this is where everything lies, and now it's there's nothing happening.
Like you have no idea. I had no idea how every single, like I said, a recognition emotion would cause like agony here, because you see somebody and you energetically respond to them. But when you have agonizing pain there, you take all that emotion and you just...
So all you're trying to do is numb yourself.
Yeah. You just totally have to numb yourself to what is going on. And like I just said, nobody can come near me because I energetically respond to everyone. And it's agonizing right now. I can't do it. So I had to have everyone stay away. But talk about when you have that spark of things that change everything. And this will make me cry. So
I said, crying is allowed.
Yeah.
It's honored. It's encouraged.
So I'm home from the hospital. I'm in the most terrific pain and the most fear of my death, and not being able to say a word, not being able to experience the emotion. And I'm sitting on the couch that morning, and all of a sudden the sun came out and shone on me. And I felt the most incredible sense of love.
Wow.
And joy and happiness in the deepest, most painful time.
Yeah.
Here I am experiencing so much love. And I was just like, oh my God, like everything is going to be okay. Like everything, like it was just so much love.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I knew that everything would be okay. It was still a huge journey beyond that.
Of course.
So the trach ended being up, was supposed to be in 4 weeks. It was 8 weeks. And I basically, when I went to have it removed, and then the doctor couldn't because he was doing a double lung transplant that day. And I had to go home and have a silent nervous breakdown, which is just, when you cannot express yourself,
right.
It takes away everything from you.
Right.
Like it really, really does.
I can't imagine what that feels like, because we could sometimes, I would say, we as humans, it's almost like I want to say, like, don't take for granted your voice, because as humans, we actually silence ourselves without having it's actually all mental. Yeah. And here you are sharing a story where you literally were like legitimately silenced. Yeah. From a physical perspective.
Right.
And what that could actually feel for people who are doing it to themselves.
Yes. Oh yes. It's
how that's hit my heart.
You don't realize. You want to just, yeah. Like, yeah. Anyways.
Wow. So you went through this nervous breakdown silently.
Yeah. So a silent nervous breakdown. Then probably it was a few days later that they got me into the hospital. And my husband just said, you just need to keep her there until you have a space to remove it.
Yeah.
So they bring me in, and of course you can't eat or drink. So you're on IVs and stuff, just waiting. Luckily, it was only maybe 48 hours that I waited. In the middle of the night, they came and got me.
Yeah.
And they removed
You say it's only 48 hours. Try sitting there, everyone, for 48 hours, not knowing.
Right. No food,
4
no
to 8 minutes would be like death, right?
Right.
So,
but at least when I was in the hospital, I knew that I wasn't probably going to die.
Because you're feeling a little bit more protected.
As soon as I walk in, I'm like, oh, I'm not going to die today.
Yeah.
They are going to save me. I'm not going to,
Yeah.
So they remove it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I still have no speech. And it took years, actually. And I went to therapists, and they're basically like, we don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. We can't help you. We've never seen this. This is very traumatic. Your vocal cords, they only go like this instead of like our vocal cords normally shut.
Right.
And mine are just like this because the tissue's dead.
Yeah.
The cartilage that our muscles push against is gone.
Right.
So we need that. Our muscles need something to push against to create volume and
just flow, really, right?
Yeah. So the funny thing was, though, is even though they were saying these things, my brain wasn't registering it. Like I was like, I'll just keep trying to talk. Wow. Like there was never a decision really to say, oh, I'm gonna get my voice back. It was always just like, well, of course I'll speak again.
Yeah.
Like I just never had a doubt.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't that I had to believe that I was gonna pep talk myself into it.
Right.
It was literally just a knowing that eventually I would speak again. And that was probably 3 years.
My gosh.
And it was an odd journey because my voice sounded very strange.
Yeah.
And people would be turning to look and see. So you felt very weird. Mm-hmm.
And isolated, I'm sure.
Yeah, very isolating. And
still isolated because you were isolated before. And now you're with no voice. Now you have a voice. And now you're still feeling.
And it's a weird voice.
A new isolation.
Right. And people are looking at you strangely.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at me strangely because I'm not recognizing the voice.
Yeah.
And I would laugh and I would be like, oh, that sounds so weird. And it really took away. It was like I had a new face. Mm-hmm. Like it was not me. Mm-hmm. And so again, it's that whole just taking a deep breath and just knowing that, that things would work out and things will. I guess I didn't actually think about it a lot. I just lived my life and talked when I could. The wind could take my breath away. The heat, if it was too hot, if it was too cold, I couldn't talk. If it was certain words I couldn't say, and I can't scream, I can't sing, I still can't.
How did you get to this spot in your seeming for me, because I've only met you with a voice, right, with your beautiful voice, so before I actually have you share that, one thing that when you were sharing, I was noticing that I think is also very important, so I want to touch on it, is that there's a power of assumption.
Yes.
So you could say hardcore, I'm going to believe it. I'm going to make it happen. Great. That works. I'm all about that. However, there's a gentle gift of assumption that when we just assume something is going to be okay, just gently assume it. And I think that's what I'm hearing, if I hear you correctly.
Yes. So it's not about saying, this is going to happen. This is how I'm going to make it happen. Mm-hmm. It's a deep knowing that and seeing it as already healed. Right. I guess I never saw myself as being disabled or sick, or I never saw myself that way. I only saw myself having a voice.
Wow, I love that.
And I think it's really when we're trying to manifest health, we don't say, I want to be healthy or I'm going to be healthy. We say, I am already healthy. Yep. And when we see it as already there is when we really experience it.
And then we start to make the choices that embody that.
Right.
I think that's really, and I learned that I'm always learning and learning. But there was something that exactly what I was watching something a few weeks back, and we're talking about, say, health as an example. And she was sharing, instead of saying, like, I want to have more muscle, or I want whatever, insert whatever that is that you're looking to achieve as a goal.
Right.
She goes, but if I just say, if you just love your body and love it, then the choices are coming from a loving space rather than I don't have this yet and I'm going to make this, I'm going to, do you know what I'm saying? And so it's like, well, the body, if I love my body, then I'll choose the, say, sourdough beautiful bread versus the enriched white flour bread as an example. Yeah. So then you come from this already having it and just treating it as such. So again, it's almost like that gentle assumption versus the, I'm going to claim this as something I'm going to achieve, which is also depending on your personality. Maybe it works for some people. Yeah. But it just, and I think gentle that other way is more the masculine part of us and the masculine energy that's been part of our role for so long. Yeah. Instead of that feminine energy, which is more subtle, more knowing, more gentle. And it's not ever about pushing, it's about flowing with it. Yeah. But yeah, you're absolutely, I totally agree with you when you say it's more about embodying it, like you say, when you love your body and you just naturally do the things that make you love your body. Yeah. Yeah. So going with your voice, and thank you for sharing. I really thought it was important too. And it's, heartbreaking hearing, but then you're on the other side, is like the other dark night of the soul. So I feel like that's such an important component of your journey, because I want to go into the E system and also your humble empathy that you have to want to help people heal themselves through this system. It's like a gentle ability. And so can you share what that looks like? Because I feel like that's why you were attracted to it. In my assumption is that you were attracted to it without maybe realizing that your journey of your voice, now you have a voice to share with others. You can heal yourself. We're meant to heal ourselves. So what is the E system? How does it work, and why did it resonate with you so much? And also, has it helped you over the last while since introducing it to other people? The energy enhancement system is a scalar wave technology. So you've seen those black boxes within the room. They're creating a toroidal field of scalar energy. Okay. So scalar energy means beyond the speed of light. Okay. And we used to think there's nothing faster than that. Right. The scalar quantum energy is faster than that. Yeah. The screens are on the other side of the more physical realm. And they're creating a biophotonic light. They are programmed with things like the Fibonacci sequence, the Schumann resonance of the earth, Rife frequencies, all that type of thing. Okay. So what they're doing is creating a field of energy within the room. So when we go into that room, the cells of our body start to synchronize with the energy that's within that room. So when we're ill, there's a lower voltage within the cells of our body. Okay. We all know we have an energetic, that's why we're alive. We have that energetic spark within our body. So low voltage in the cells means disease and ill health. Right. Higher voltage within the cells, which when we sync with those energy fields, raises it. And when our cells are at a higher voltage, then our body can easily heal itself. Right. So it's not healing you. It's giving your body almost like an energetic battery charge. I literally was going to say, I feel like you're plugging yourself in. Yeah, plugging yourself in. Wow. And when we do that, then we can really heal. And the effect on the brain waves is astounding. Like for me, that's one of the really things I notice is that I always feel so in coherence. Wow. And you would think starting a new business and, that worry, anxiety, no. Right. Because of this system that I spend my time in so often, I felt so calm and relaxed. And clarity of thought. Right. Clarity of feelings. Like you don't kind of second guess yourself as much. Right. You just know what you want and you're able to follow it more easily. It's interesting. So maybe you could touch on it because I'm not into the science of anything. Right. into the feeling of everything. But I think about, the sympathetic versus the parasympathetic nervous system.
Right.
And so as you're chatting, I wanted to touch on what you just shared. So whenever we're running a business or if we're doing something, we need, we need the creativity.
Right.
And ironically enough, unfortunately, when we are in our sympathetic nervous system, we are in like being chased by a bear mode.
Right.
And you can't exactly create a business when you're being chased by a bear. I mean, you could have your pen and paper and run at the same time. Probably not going to be the coolest business plan, but I'd love to see one. So I'm feeling like what you're saying is it's almost, synergistic, is that your system, the EE system, is allowing you to stay in your parasympathetic nervous system, which allows you to create.
Right.
And now I'm tying it all together because I do want to share, going back to our conversation around like not trying to run a business. It just, people show up that need it. So it's almost like this EE system is actually, I could see the whole thing working for you in your favor around people are coming to you.
Yes.
I mean, like, really coming here at the Way of the Heart Center here in Mazatlan in Centro. And clearly they are being called to, just like you were being called. So is this, now do you kind of see the light of why you were brought to Mexico?
Oh,
you're like,
absolutely.
Why am I going?
Oh,
wow.
Yeah. It absolutely is the reason I'm here.
Yeah.
I haven't, as soon as I saw it, I thought this is my reason for being here.
Amazing.
And then, and again, like this all just happened organically.
Yeah.
Like the perfect place came along that suits it beautifully. It's a beautiful historic home. It's over 150 years old. It's been restored. It had a beautiful energy to start with. And then we bring that in. I've actually had people say, so there's a restaurant right beside me.
Oh, yeah. Totem. Yeah.
And I had a new client last week and he said, since I've been in Mazatlan, I keep wanting to go to Totem. He goes, that's the one place I keep going over and over. He said, I didn't know your center was here. And he said, but I kept being drawn to go there because it felt so nice. And he goes, and now I find out you're right next door. And that's why.
But the interesting thing too, though, is that when I first came and I met with you and I sat in the room for 2 hours, I can vouch and put a testimonial on your website, is that there is something to be said for the energy that I felt. I can't call it anything, but there is a frequency energy of my body feeling just better.
Oh, yeah.
And you had mentioned too, that there is like a specific radius.
Yes.
How far is the radius though?
The healing takes place within the system itself, within the room.
The torus.
But it creates 2.2 miles around the center.
Right.
It transmutes what we tend to call negative EMFs. They're not negative. They're just not good for our bodies.
Correct.
There's nothing wrong with them necessarily, but they're not good for our bodies. So this creates almost like a protection zone. It's
amazing.
Like 2 miles around the center, which I think is super cool.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
and I also think too, I want to touch on nutrition a little bit, it's not going to be a nutrition convo, but I will say, because I do follow a lot of people, and we do know that, I make a joke like the Pop-Tarts that people are eating now are not the Pop-Tarts from the 70s when we were, eating our fun Pop-Tarts.
Yeah.
Clearly I was addicted to Pop-Tarts as a kid. But when I think about the food and that what we're eating and what we're ingesting and what is available to us, maybe different in Mexico, but not even really, I don't want to generalize, is we're not eating the same nutrient dense foods. We don't have the same soil. We're not getting the same minerals from Mama Earth as we were before. And so I feel like this system is so timely for us as a species because we're not really, we have a good fight that we're putting up right now with our cellular being. So if you can be supporting the cellular energy, life force energy, which I think is so important. When I think of the body, I think of like, what is my life force energy? How am I feeling? Am I being depleted? Am I being kind of like things are working against us? And I will say they are. So meditation is one way, but also how are we building ourselves back so that we could run better?
Right.
So I feel like that's something that's so pivotal right now for us.
Definitely. So when people come, I always tell them, it's not a quick fix. You're not going to walk in there and whatever was bothering you is gone. Actually, sometimes, believe it or not, I've had pain disappear within a very short time.
Yeah.
I say you need to use this in conjunction with a better diet.
Yeah.
better exercise, meditation, like everything that you can throw at it for health.
You're right.
Like help the system help you.
Exactly.
And diet, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I don't eat perfectly. I love ice cream. I love different things like that.
Yeah.
But the majority of the time to be eating in a mindfully helpful way.
Yeah.
And to be drinking more water and to be looking at things like meditation. And people like, oh, they think they're not meditators. We're all meditators.
Walk on the beach is meditation. Gardening is meditation. Pet your
Happy.
puppy.
Listening
meditation.
to music is
Yeah.
meditation.
Right.
Walking is meditation.
Yeah.
There's so much that's meditation.
Right. And I think it all works as an ecosystem.
Yes.
So when you feel better, you make better choices. And I, being in the wellness space for over a decade now as well too, and working with people, I say, working with what I've been doing for a while around like elevating our frequency is whenever you start to feel better, then you want to start to get out. You want to put the running shoes on. So it's all synergistic. It all works as an ecosystem. It's not just one thing.
Yeah.
So it's a support system.
Absolutely.
Right. But you can't expect to come and do a 2-hour session with you and run to McDonald's and say, why is this not working?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. There has to be personal agency on stuff as well too.
Personal responsibility for your health overall.
Yeah.
And doing things like going for massage and acupuncture, like the most natural things we can do to help our body in so many ways. Yeah. Yeah.
So
it's not like a pill that we take.
I was going to say too, we live in what's next pill for us, and we won't go into that.
Yeah.
But it is that unfortunately, we are taught or we have these expectations that the next pill can help us so that we can continue to do the things that are the reasons why we need the pill.
Right. Exactly.
So what are some of the ways that people have felt better with the EE system, and how does it work for people who maybe are local? I know that you actually, how would you put it? Like you not run the region, but you are responsible for supporting the system here in this region. But I've got, our community is also around the world. There are so many different spaces and clinics and practices that can also.
So we have basically kind of an umbrella called Unified Healing.
Okay.
And they recently merged with the Energy Enhancement System people to become one organization.
Awesome.
So within, and I mean, they're global right now. They've got nearly 500 different centers throughout the world. I know, it's amazing.
That's nuts.
A lot of them are concentrated in the US and Canada.
Okay.
There's a lot in Australia. We were the second one to open in Mexico.
Oh, cool.
So the company is they have very few guidelines about what we need to do. We own the system and we can create the center that we want to create around it. So I've created more, I've always believed that technology and spirituality belong together. So I've tried to create that within the center. We are the only ones who can open in Mazatlan because they want to protect each person's investment.
I love that.
Which is a wonderful thing. We also our fees can't be above a certain amount.
Right.
So because I'm in here in Mexico, I can only charge half of what US and Canada can charge.
Based on everything, yeah.
And I think that's amazing.
Yeah, I do too.
What's the sense of having a center if people can't afford it?
Exactly.
So you really want to make it as affordable as possible. So people can go on Unified Healing. They've got a global map of all the centers around the world.
Wow.
And each one you can click on the little point and it brings up their website. Yeah. And it brings up a contact form.
Okay.
So I get contact forms all the time in this area. Yeah. Yeah, and they're on Instagram.
Amazing.
Like they put out things.
Yeah.
So I really haven't myself had to do much advertising because it's grown organically through word of mouth, which is so beautiful. I mean, that's the best way, right?
The best way.
That's when people resonate and oh my gosh, I resonated, come here.
Yeah.
So that's so beautiful. They come and most people after they do a 2-hour session, that's the minimum amount of time you can do.
Yeah.
Almost everyone has bought like a package of hours after that because some people do experience pain relief the first time.
Right.
I know I did. I experienced like the clearing of my sinuses that had been bothering me for months.
Yeah.
Gone that first time.
Wow.
But most
It's interesting I
people-
share that because my husband, just so everyone to know, is in there during our podcast and he's had a blocked ear. So I'm like, I'm just wondering.
Yeah, it may.
Wouldn't that be interesting?
I've had people
and I say that because you mentioned that. So
yeah,
it'll be
all
interesting.
connected. Yeah.
Yeah.
Be interesting.
So 2-hour sessions minimum. And then again, obviously depends because I know you do have some clients that you work with that are
Right.
friends of ours that are able to support their clients through your system, which I think is so heart-centered. I
Oh my
love
gosh.
hearing that.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm
You're a
so
solution
grateful.
that they didn't have before you opened in June. When did you open here in Mazatlan?
It was in June. Yeah. Yeah. So people will sometimes come and do 2 hours every single day until they use their package.
Yeah.
Some people choose to come weekly.
Yeah.
And some people will do overnights.
Yeah, the slumber parties.
Yeah.
How much fun is that?
One client who's now a friend, he's done like 5 overnights.
I love it.
He just loves it.
Isn't that wonderful?
And I mean, when I first got back from Toronto, I was in Toronto for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's where I'm sleeping the very first night.
Yeah.
So I'm in there 11 hours.
Really?
Just solid. Like the sleep is so different. Like you go really deep.
Yeah. How does it work with pets? You know me, I'm a dog mom and I've got, I love that.
Beautifully.
Yeah.
Like if you look on, well, it's funny.
I mean, if I look at your cat
here, I know
let's be honest.
Well, she, my little girl, Kitty, she had, since I got her, this terrible cough that no vet has ever been able to do anything for.
Really?
And like her whole body would heave and heave. And then her breathing afterwards would be just like hard.
Yeah.
Well, she almost never coughs now.
That's amazing.
And that hard recovery of breathing is completely gone.
That's amazing.
Like, yeah. And they're not like, you can't say, you got to believe or you got to do this. Like they're just
there you go.
Yeah. And he had a lot more anxiety. And you see.
I remember you shared that. And I'm like, are you sure?
And he's so
relaxed
now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So animals, we've had a few animals come in, dogs and things. And people say they notice the difference in their dogs, like being relaxed.
Yeah.
And being.
Okay. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So in your space here it's just beautiful. I'm so happy that we did this on location.
Yeah. Me
so
too.
The Way of the Hearts, is that something that you've created or what? Where did that come from?
That name actually came to me in Toronto.
Okay.
So it was April of like 2019.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, I need a name I didn't know what it was going to be, a website. And the way, it was funny. I was going to go Way of the Heart. Yeah. But the domain name was really expensive.
I've been there.
So I added an S.
Yeah.
And it was like a fraction of the price. So I'm like, okay, it's the Way of the Hearts then.
And I love it because and we pulled the Unity card this morning.
Right.
That's pretty cool.
Right. And everything now, if you've noticed, is all about heart-based consciousness.
Absolutely. Heart coherence, everything. Yeah.
Everywhere you look, it's heart.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And so it's so funny that I chose that name and I'm like, yeah, it's perfect for this.
Yeah.
This exact thing.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of, amazing friends that are here in Mazatlan. And again, many of the people that are in my community are also coming back. The expats and the snowbirds are coming back to Mazatlan. So if you are in the location of beautiful Mazatlan, Mexico, or if you're coming for a visit, it's a great place to be in the winter months, that they can come here. Now, how do they book through you? Do you have a website? You have a Facebook group as well too, or do you do updates on Facebook as well?
I do updates on Facebook, but I have a website.
Okay. And what is that? And I'll share it as well, but I'd love for you to share where we could find you.
It is thewayofthehearts.com.
Okay, perfect.
So on that website, it explains the technology more. Okay. It talks about, there's links to testimonials.
Oh, perfect.
That are coming from all over the world in all different languages.
Okay.
My website has videos, and then it has price lists and packages and just everything you could possibly want, I hope, is on there.
Yeah. Because you mentioned wave technology and you mentioned biophotonic, which right over my head.
Yes.
However, that's where you would go to find out.
Yeah.
If many people, like, say, not me, but say Anthony, my husband, would be like, what do you mean? I want,
dive.
And I'm just like, just throw me in the room and I'll tell you how I feel.
Right.
So that is where you would find the information with the videos on those types of technology.
And then simply reaching out to us through the website and saying, can you give me a deeper dive?
Yeah.
Because some people, going deep into the technologies,
they're
like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
But I know myself, I like to do
Exactly.
a deeper dive, and a lot of people do. So I
Sure.
can direct you in
Yeah.
that, you
I
know,
love it.
like I'm always here. I'm very hands-on with everybody.
Yeah.
And I can always direct you to what you need to learn
Mhm.
more. If there's something that I can't answer, I can
Mhm.
always direct you to
I love it.
find it.
It's amazing. And I also came to a beautiful feminine wisdom event last
Oh,
Friday.
yeah,
So I know that
right.
you also, you know, sparingly will have other events and things like that here. So are you, does your space offer, if anyone's looking to, if they're local and they wanted to share their gifts, or are you doing anything else coming up? Will there be any fun events coming up over the season for many of the snowbirds
Right.
coming? Because we'll have a flux of the birds coming in.
Yeah,
in the
right.
next, in the next couple of weeks. I'm so excited.
Yeah, me
Is there
too.
anything else coming up or in the works?
Well, I have created a new meditation session
Oh, beautiful.
that incorporates breathing exercises, body scans, guided meditation,
Oh,
personal
beautiful.
reflection, and then a conversation afterwards, optional totally,
Yeah.
with, you know, tea and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's sold out. So that starts in November.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to create another one if I
Okay.
have enough interest.
It's
I'd love to
amazing.
create another one. So that's coming up.
Okay.
We are going to be offering massage here in the center. So before your session, after your session,
Mhm.
whatever that looks like.
That's amazing.
And then, yeah, I'd like to bring in sound healers and do sound healing within the energy room. You know, I'm so open to collaboration with others
I love it.
in bringing their healing gifts
Yeah.
to the center as a place to gather, as a place to perhaps hold workshops in all kinds of different things.
Yeah.
And even I want to do a spa night,
Okay.
because we have these gold collagen face masks that are from the energy enhancement system
Oh, wow.
in Nevada. I know.
Don't let it be sold out and then tell me it's sold
Yeah,
out.
I know, right?
Please put me on your VIP registered. I'll give you a payment.
Yeah, right.
You know? You sell out fast on all
So
of your
yeah,
things.
we'll create.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. There's just
So much.
so exciting
I
when
know.
you are open to collaborating,
Oh, so
and
fun.
people just come in
Yeah.
and they have these gifts they want to offer.
Yeah.
And it's so beautiful.
It's amazing.
It's just so beautiful.
It's
It's
amazing.
beautiful to be in the energy of collaboration and healing and allowing and surrendering.
I know.
It's so beautiful.
I love it. This is so much fun. I always ask my guests a question I never know.
Yeah.
So I'm just like literally thinking about this. I would love to ask you, because you had said that, you know, change is always happening.
Right.
And I know before we chatted on the interview, you were talking about, you know, you're feeling like you're in this like new space again and like new beginnings. So I would love to ask you, if you were to be 20 years from now, what would your 20 years from now self want to remind you right now? I feel like crying. It's so weird. Woo. Yeah. I feel like just to remind you right now, as you're sitting here today, what would she be saying to you right now in this moment?
She would say, you know what, you're doing a good job. Be easy with yourself.
Yeah.
Continue to just allow and surrender. And what you just said a little while ago about live your authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
And when we live our authentic self, it's not about needing to say to others that this is me authentically, and this is what I believe, and this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
It's not about that.
No.
It's just simply embodying that authentic self.
Right.
It has nothing to do with anyone else, is what they're doing.
Exactly.
It only has to do with what we're doing.
I love it.
And just to tell her, remember that, stay in that authentic.
I love it. Thank you, Sheri. You're such a joy and such a gift. And I'm so happy. I have to share, whenever I met you, I've seen you around Mazatlan. And then we went to a soft opening at a friend's furniture shop.
Oh, right.
And my husband,
right.
It was pretty busy. We had like a lot of our mutual friends, and my husband, so Anthony, he has a name. He came running through and he's like, I found you, your new favorite friend. And I'm like, he literally had talked to you first. And he's like, you have to, you're not going to believe it. You have to. And so he connected us. He like literally brought us together.
Oh,
it was through him at the event, and he was right. So I just want to say thank you.
Oh my gosh.
It was so cute.
Lovely.
Sometimes he's my best recruiter when it comes to new friends.
And he was so like, I couldn't believe when I met him too. I was like, oh my God, this is like ray of sunshine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's like hugging you, and you're just like, you can feel that he is his authentic self.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you feel that immediately.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank you, Anthony.
Thank you,
for
Anthony. And
bringing
thank you,
us
Anthony,
together.
for letting us have a voice today.
Right.
With our
so important, because
Right?
I've always said
Oh.
that I think this manifested because I wasn't living my
And I
true
was
self.
actually going to ask you,
Yes.
What did that mean for you?
I
And
would
wow.
definitely say it was always, what do other people expect of me? Always the chameleon who melded to what they needed me to be, and never speaking my truth.
Wow.
And then when you're given when your voice is taken away and then it comes back, then
You're like,
you realize how deeply you need to honor it, because, well, for one thing, I don't ever want it to go away again.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
What a beautiful, beautiful lesson and message and gift of insight from you and wisdom. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so honored. This was so magical.
awesome.
Oh my gosh. And I just want to say to everyone who has been blessed to listen to Sheri's beautiful message, I just want to ask you, if this helped you in any way, to please share this conversation. If you are in Mazatlan, then her space is just epic and beautiful. And even if you're not, if this message hit something within you, to please share this. You never know who needs to get their voice back.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right?
Oh, that's beautiful.
And so if there's anything that I've learned in my own life, is that we learn about ourselves through other people's stories. And there's always a part of someone's story that's a part of our own that gets to get ignited. So I say thank you to all of my beautiful community for following us and to watch these beautiful episodes. And my gift for you is to follow the magic that ignites your inner essence. And until next time, thank you, Sheri. I love you so much.
Diane,
it's been an honor.
It has.
Thank you. Hey friends, thank you again for following and tuning in to the Lucy Smiles Living Room podcast. It really does truly support my mission to help inspire you through our beautiful guests that I also want to thank, who have come on to share their beautiful stories of transformation. If you want to connect with me privately, you can actually go right to my website, lucysmiles.com. Feel free to send to me a personal email. You can also catch my newsletter by subscribing, which also includes my weekly intuitive messages. If you're on social media, you can follow me with my handle, I am Lucy Smiles. And if this was inspiring to you and something helped support you on whatever the journey is that you are going through, please feel free to review, write a comment, and most importantly, if you can subscribe and share this episode and all our other episodes, that would be amazing. My dream and my mission is to truly help you to follow the magic that ignites your inner essence. And so until next time, we will catch you soon. I hope to catch you on the next episode.